And senior foreign affairs expert Atul Aneja joins us on DD India News. Welcome, Atulji, to the show. In your view, what was it that precipitated this change in asylum policy by the UK? That is to say, what problems is such immigration causing in the UK, or is it more about British politics?
Tanvi, I think it's more about British politics, really. And if you see that the pressure which is coming from the Reform Party of Nigel Farage, if you see the poll figures, you can see that it's a rising popularity of the far right, as they say in Britain. So partly it is to stem that damage which the Reform Party is causing to the Labour Party. So there is definitely a domestic political angle to the entire initiative which has been taken. So I think it's primarily that which has caused them. There is generally Britain is part of a geography which is the West, where the far right is generally making inroads. If you look beyond Britain, if you see in continental Europe, you see Marine Le Pen's party in France, which is gaining popularity. AfD in Germany. So it's essentially within the framework of the far right assertion across Europe, and including and specifically to Britain. I think it's a response to that these harsher measures are being taken on immigration and asylum, essentially.
Okay, are the changes in the UK asylum policy also at least partially related to immigration changes announced by the US government? In other words, how far are they possibly related to economics?
Yes, Tanvi. You cannot see what's happening in Britain in isolation. It's part of a bigger change which is taking in the West. And it's the spearhead of that is, frankly, President Donald Trump in the US. And I think that it's created a certain far-right momentum beyond the United States and has engulfed large part of Europe. And it's that sentiment which is growing stronger even in the UK. And I see it's what has happened in the UK is a response to this larger, let's say, a conservative movement which has started in the West. And I think it's in response to this larger change in mood in politics. And democracies can't ignore the way public opinion is shifting. And I think it's survival instincts are coming in here. And that's why a Labour Party, which is supposed to be more centrist and pro-left, is taking a position which is closer to the right.
Okay. Do you see any grey areas in the new immigration law which could significantly adversely affect asylum seekers? For instance, those who seek work but are unable to get it, and also being forcibly sent home if it is deemed safe by the authorities. A lot of arbitrariness there?
No, I think the whole idea is that you're not cancelling genuine asylum seekers. So and asylum seekers means those who have a threat to their life in their home country, and therefore those seem to be protected. But the review element is coming into the picture. That it is not a permanent ticket for you, so-called the golden visa, to come into the UK. So the review period has been reduced from 5 to 2.5 years. Progressive. So you come in, but you'll be reviewed. You can be sent back if the conditions in your home country improve. Okay, time for you to go back. So this is something while you protect genuine asylum seekers, but if it should be clearly focused not on anything else but the threat to your rights, basic fundamental rights in your home country, including your right to life. I think if that's the parameter it's going on. The second message which is coming is that because you become asylum doesn't mean that you integrate into the British society. So there were welfare measures which were earlier automatic in terms of housing, in terms of allowances. I think all that is now under the scanner. But tell me, I still think it's a bit of a gamble for the Labour Party, because while you try and go more right wing, your original supporters, which is the centre and the left, they might start leaving you. So we'll see how the British government responds to these competing pressures. But right now, it's clearly a shift to the right. as your report mentioned, that there is going to be a further detailing of this on Monday, I think.
Yes, yes.
And the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood is going to give more clarity on this.
Yes.
But it's a reflection of a much bigger movement and a mood which is engulfing the West right now. Starting with Trump, the initial point which you made.
Okay. How do you see this law in terms of its ethical implications? Would you call it harsh and unnecessary, as critics and many, over 100 British charities have termed it?
I don't think it's necessarily harsh. You see, because if you are a refugee, if you have a problem, then you have to abide by the sentiment and the rules of your host country. And for example, if you can work, you can't be a freeloader. If you can work and you're not doing so, then you're not integrating. You're not. Your focus is not just on saving your basic rights, but you're using this or misusing this particular asylum status to just live without contributing to your adopted country. I think that's not fair. Second thing is also about families coming. There's a lot of. I'm not sure so much about Britain, but in Canada it happens. You bring in your relatives out there. They go ahead and take free treatment, surgeries, whatever, because they're welfare state. I think this needs to be corrected. At the same time, I think when there is a genuine need for people when there is a genuine threat to them, it should remain open to that. To be honest, if you go to today's Britain and if you're traveling in a subway in UK, I think that this multiculturalism has gone a bit too far. I think if you look from a British point of view.
Okay.
So
no, but Atulji,
balance.
multiculturalism is fine if you're contributing to their economy, and that
Absolutely.
is also there in the policy. I mean, as per reports, obviously we'll get more clarity on Monday, but those who contribute to the UK economy can be, given the grant to stay there for longer.
Okay.
So my question to you is, yes, immigration has become a very voter-centric topic. Of course, that will get you votes, but eventually it's about economics.
Absolutely. And I think they made a right decision here that if you're contributing to the economy, earlier your ILR, your status to live for long term, without getting citizenship used to be a 5-year. If you're there
Yes.
5, you can. But I think they've extended it to 20 years now. That you are there for a temporary purpose. If you prove that you are contributing to the society and to the economy, but it's you got to prove that, and it's going to be 20 years before you get your ILR. Somewhere, I mean, perhaps the 20 years period is too long a period, but somewhere that 5-year rule had to be looked at. Perhaps they've gone overboard, and in a parliamentary democracy, I'm not sure whether 20 years would be the period, but at least the message has gone that you don't go to your adopted country, get long-term visas over there, and yet you create pressure groups within which are away from the mainstream. So I do see merit in taking a position which protects Britain's core interests and yet strikes a balance with it. Perhaps needs more tweaking, and I think that's where the debate will go.
Yeah.
And for Labour Party itself, it has to strike that balance. It can't go too far right. And first of all, Labour as a party and loses its own identity and its core base in the centre and centre left.
Okay, on a broader level, do you see other European countries following Britain and tightening their immigration laws? And do you also see an overall reverse migration happening from here onwards?
Yes, great question. You see, this is what's happening all over. The pressure from the right is coming in, not just the Reform Party in Britain, but the AfD, for example, in Germany. And that's a huge pressure group within Germany now, which is saying that, your asylum policies need to be majorly reviewed because of various kind of social problems which are emerging, including crime rate, etc., and in terms of economy. So so that's the sentiment in Germany. You see the same thing which is happening in France. They're almost to the point of capturing power. So this is a much larger issue. It's not that others will follow Britain. I think your own report said it's Denmark which really set the
Yes.
mark. And this what the British law is a derivative of the Danish law, which has been passed. And there were people from the British Home Office which went to study the Danish model, and and then come back and came out with this particular initiative which we are speaking about. So I don't think Britain is leading it, but it's an overall sentiment. Denmark is already there. If you see Holland, for example, the Netherlands, you had a right-wing leadership out there till not so long ago. And you see, it's entire Europe which is changing. I think UK is being forced to follow what is happening, the overall sentiment in the continent.
Okay.
But this particular movement is only going to strengthen as the country's economies, for various other reasons, are not doing that well, including the lack of cheap gas and cheap oil from Russia. That's creating big problems and inflation and economic hardships. This is going to reflect in politics itself. And that political shift, I suspect, is going to be a more right-wing movement in the West in general and specifically in Europe now.
Okay, I don't know, it is a bit ironical for sure that Shabana Mahmood also is a UK citizen, but is been an immigrant there. Her roots are of Pakistan origin. But yes, as times go by, the policy shifts are making their rifts very clear. And of course, it's about politics as much as it's about economics. We leave it here. Thank you very much, Atul and Neja ji, for being on the show.
You're welcome, Tanvi.